Trudeau and his terrorist buddies, a tale of woe. I think it's worth noting a few things about our Prime Minister and his choice of colleagues. To date, Justin Trudeau has befriended no less than 6 terrorists, and those are just the ones that we know of. Let me go down the list. We'll start with 3 men accused of links to terror groups between 2001 and 2003. They were all 3 later found to be improperly treated by the Canadian government and awarded approximately $10 million each for their pain and suffering while detained in Syria. In the government public accounts, this money was listed as settlement of claim for general damages and taken from the budget of the Department of Public Safety and Preparedness. Okay. All 3 received apologies from Minister Chrystia Freeland along with their $10 million payouts. But we didn't hear much about this in the news, did we? Let's talk about these 3 fellows individually for a moment. I'll start with Abdullah al-Malki. Abdullah, born in 1971 in Syria, immigrated to Canada with his family in 1987 at the age of 16. He became an engineer while here, and in 1988, he was questioned by CSIS after returning to Canada from a few years of working for NGOs in Pakistan, where he met and worked with Ahmed Khadr, father of the infamous Omar Khadr. Nothing suspicious about him here. In 2000 and 2001, following the September attacks, he was again questioned by CSIS. And in 2002, he was arrested in Syria, purportedly on a visit to see his grandmother, where he stayed as a guest of the Syrian government for the next 22 months. Next is Ahmed El-Mati, detained after traveling to Syria for his wedding, which in the end did not take place. Who is El-Mati? Why, he's no less than the brother of suspected Al-Qaeda terrorist Amr El-Mati. Never heard of either of these names, have we? Ahmed came to Canada in 1981 at the age of 17. In 1988, he traveled to Afghanistan to fight with the Mujahideen against the Soviets. And in 1986, he became a Canadian citizen. He returned to Canada in 1988 and he worked mostly as a truck driver. And on August the 16th, 2001, he was stopped at the U.S.-Canada border where customs officials found a map of Ottawa listing both government and nuclear research facilities. El-Mati later claimed that these were tourist maps, nothing more. After September 11th, he was again interviewed by CSIS. In 2001, he went to Syria to wed, where he was jailed and, according to him, forced to confess to a terrorism plot involving 2 fellow Syrian Canadians, whose names you may well recognize, Maher Arar and Abdullah al-Malki. The plot thickens. Number 3 newly minted terrorist/millionaire is Muyed Nuruddin, imprisoned while visiting family in Syria. Nuruddin, an Iraqi-born Canadian geologist, was interviewed by CSIS in 2000. Now, he palled around with Mahmoud Es-Said Jabula, an Egyptian who's been detained in Canada on a security certificate due to his association with members of Al-Jihad, an Islamist terrorist group active since the late 1970s. No possible connection to terrorism here. In 2001, let's just think about this for a minute. Syria was on the U.S. list of terrorist countries. Syria did indeed provide safe haven and support to several terrorist groups. Bashar al-Assad was in power, and Syria's human rights practices were being questioned by the international community. So my question here is, what the hell were these 3 guys thinking, and what were they doing in Syria? Why were they involved with the aforementioned shady characters, and what exactly did they think was going to happen when they walked into the lion's den? Well, Canada has become soft on terror of late. Moving on, we come to Canada's poster boy for the left, Omar Khadr. awarded $10.5 million along with a formal apology from Trudeau himself for having been detained in Guantanamo for 10 years without proper assistance from the Canadian government, don't you know? Why was he at Guantanamo? Well, something to do with a little firefight he had with some fellow jihadis who managed to kill Sergeant Christopher Spear and blind another American sergeant, Lane Morris. Khadr pleaded guilty to these crimes, only to recant later, claiming that he only confessed so that he could return to Canada to finish up his sentence. He was released on bail in May of 2015. Quite the prize, wouldn't you say? But it gets worse. How about Joshua Boyle, former husband to Zainab Khadr, the Western-hating sister of little jihadi Omar Khadr? See all the connections here? Boyle goes off on a hike with his pregnant American wife, Caitlin Coleman, to Afghanistan because, who wouldn't want to do that in the heart of Taliban country? They get captured by the Taliban and are eventually returned to Canada, where they are treated to a private meeting with our PM, which Boyle goes on to tweet to the public with a cryptic little message at the end of his tweet that the two had met before in 2006 over other common interests. He ends his tweets with the words, "haha, creepy." And why has this meeting never been properly explained to the Canadian public? Last but not least, there is Jaspal Atwal, friend, but not really, of our ridiculous excuse for a prime minister. Atwal was convicted of attempted murder of an Indian cabinet minister and charged but never convicted due to a technical glitch with the brutal 1985 beating up of Ujjal Dosanjh, an opponent of the Sikh separatist movement who went on to serve as NDP Premier of BC as well as federal Liberal cabinet minister. Of course, Atwal was invited to dine with Trudeau and company at a state dinner while in India during his latest family vacation, where Trudy and family got to play dress up. But when Atwal's criminal history came to light, the Liberals quickly disinvited him, claiming that it was all just one big mix-up or a conspiracy by the Indian government or something. Nothing to see here, folks. But as Alberta Conservative MP Jim Iglinski asked during yesterday's question period to the Prime Minister, why would you ever meet with Jaspal Atwal? To which there really is no answer. Well, I think this little dry type of mine makes it quite clear why. Trudeau has a thing for terrorists. And it should worry all Canadians that this man is our leader and representative on the international stage. He has dug himself a pretty big hole this time, and there are still 2 years left for him to bury himself, along with all of us, in this social justice, progressive agenda that he prides himself on. The lunatics are running the asylum, and we have terrorists all around, and a prime minister who cannot